Well, it's been a while since I've had the time really to do one of these morning videos. Between Lent and Easter, the extra worship services, these little kind of quiet times in the morning before everybody comes in, where I just get to sit down and reflect. I haven't really been able to do that for a while, so I'm quite excited that I can do that this morning. Add to that too that the fact that I've been off for 2 weeks. So first of all, thank you to Joyce, who filled the pulpit for me while I was gone and did an excellent job, and thank you also to Session, who made sure that all those moving parts were all taken care of while I was gone, so that I didn't have to spend too much time worrying about what was happening at the church. Everything was taken care of, and it was great. Um, and I spent those 2 weeks at home really because, well, we're in lockdown, right? So it's a terrible time to take vacation, but I kind of needed the rest and the perspective. But we did make it as far as Tilsonburg, so we went to the Burger King drive-through because you can't get a Whopper in town here, and I determined that Whoppers were essential, so we went to Burger King, went through the drive-through. So that was our big trip. It was rather exciting. I also watched a lot of Beastmaster, it's an American Ninja kind of show. So it's an obstacle course. So men and women go through these, swinging and jumping and doing all these things that I couldn't possibly do while I yell at the TV and tell them everything that they're doing wrong. So that's kind of fun. And spent time in the backyard on the trampoline. Not nearly enough time on the trampoline as far as Noah's concerned, but I was tired actually because tired from a year of work, because I really haven't taken much vacation, but also because I was doing a lot of physical work during the time that I was at home. We got a new deck put in the front, so we can sit out and have coffee, which is really nice. And then I built a big planter, raised up the garden down the side of the house, raised the other garden along the driveway, and turned over all the soil in the other gardens, and added some more dirt and compost, and did a lot of that fun stuff. So very little planting. I did put in some pepper plants rather foolishly. It snowed the next day, and my pepper plants are no more. One little fun thing though, on the one raised garden, I put a rock that I dug up while we were doing the deck, and I just kind of placed it on the edge of the garden. And there's chipmunk that lives in behind there. And I've seen him now in the mornings. He comes out and it's like the Lion King, right? He comes out of his little hole and he sits on that rock and he just looks around, surveys his domain. So I feel good about that. That's kind of exciting. Anyway, so I did a lot of this preparation work outside in the garden. And as I was doing so, I couldn't help but think really about the church and how it applies to us here. Because right now we're in this quiet time, right? We're certainly not in full bloom. We don't have the full growth of summer and fall. We don't have that explosion of spring yet. But this is our time of preparing ourselves. We're preparing ourselves to host this new growth. And so we're working the soil, right? We recall that parable that Jesus spoke about with the sower with the seeds, right? And he's scattering seeds kind of indiscriminately, which is odd. And he throws some on the path, and the birds eat it because it can't sink into the soil. And he throws some in the rocks, and it kind of filters down into the rocks, which is good. The birds can't get it, but it can't really grow. It puts out roots, but it just hits obstacles. He throws some in the weeds, but the weeds choke it out. There's no sunlight and air and stuff in there. And finally, there's that good soil, right, where the seeds go in and they find purchase and they grow and they produce 60, 100-fold time what the seed was. Anyway, so that's us. We're trying to be the good soil right now. We're trying to turn ourselves into the good soil, and that involves a lot of digging, right? We're turning over that crust, as the soil gets compacted. You get a crust, and the water and the air can't penetrate properly. We get like that ourselves too. We get crusty. Some of us get really crusty, but we got to break through that, right? We dig deep and we bring back all that good stuff that has been buried. We bring that back up to the surface, and that good stuff, it's the wonder and the joy and the awe and that unmediated relationship with God. These are the things that we bury. These are the things that get covered up with just our day-to-day worries, right? The day-to-day worries and stress of life, they pack all those things underneath. And so they're no longer really visible. They're still there though, and we can get at them. In Revelation, one of the letters to one of the churches, it says to the church, "You've forgotten your first love," and that's why we need to turn over our soil. What's that first love that first brought us to Christ? What was that thing that brought us into that community of believers? We need to rediscover that. That's how we prepare our soil and get ready for this new planting. The other thing that really came to mind too for me during this was, as I said, I did some raised gardens, and so raised gardens, I guess there's kind of two benefits. One is that it's a little bit easier to work on because you don't have to stoop down as far. But for me, the issue really had more to do with boundaries. It was more about setting boundaries, because on my driveway there's quite a slope on my driveway. So when it rains, a lot of my garden soil just washes away. Now, maybe soil might be a generous word. It's kind of more sand. I'm in a pretty dry place. But a lot of it washes away, and it ends up just going down the gutter. It goes down the street. So I'm losing soil during the rain. And as I think about how this applies to the church, in this storm that we've been weathering for the last year, we have certainly lost people. So we have lost some people to death. So there are some people who have died, and we grieve them, we mourn them, we treasure the memories. But there are other people who have just been washed away. They've just drifted away with the forces of the world. Now, part of it is the fact that we're not able to gather in the same way that we are used to. So those ties between us get a little bit weaker, right? So it's easier to just drift away. But I also have to accept some responsibility for that myself too. Because for myself, I also have some lack of boundaries too. And what that means is I get distracted with a lot of the administrative parts of running the church. And there are times that I let the pastoral care elements fade away, that it's somehow easy to not make those extra phone calls or take the time for those visits because there's an emergency brewing at my desk at the moment. One of the things that I've actually learned in this time away, of just getting away from the day-to-day and gaining a little bit of perspective, is that just because something seems urgent doesn't actually mean that it's important. And so I'm working on making that distinction right now. And to me, what's important is not so much the administrivia as it is the people, so the pastoral matters. So I'm going to, as I come back to work after this break, I'm coming back a lot more focused. And I share this with you in part so that you can hold me accountable to my words too, right? So when I start getting distracted and say, oh, but I got to do this, this, and this, go, no. It's people, right? This is what we're here for. Transformation of people through sharing the word of Christ. So with this in mind, after this break and this perspective and kind of sweeping away some of the little things that have been dogging me for a while, I have to say I'm actually quite excited about what this spring holds. Hopefully you remember at the start of the year I shared with you a scripture. It was Isaiah 61, the last half of verse 3 and verse 4. And it's talking about Jerusalem returning to their land. And it says this: they will be called oaks of righteousness. And I'm going to substitute we for they, because this verse is for us. We will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, to display his glory. And we shall build up the ancient ruins. We'll raise up the former devastations. We'll repair the ruined cities, the devastations of many generations. Now, this is still our calling. This hasn't changed in any way whatsoever. This is our year of rebuilding and restoring. And we faced challenges in this past year. We certainly have. But we are not struck down. Because as I just look about the church, with God as our strength, financially, we're healthy. We're actually looking at hiring a new person. Our volunteers are strong and engaged. We take care of one another. Not only do we take care of one another, but we actually have the resources to take care of people outside of our community at the same time. We're an Easter people. So right now we're in this tomb of lockdown and loss. We're a little bit bound at the moment. But we are going to emerge from that tomb in a new and much more wonderful form. So what that means is that this now is our time of preparation. It's our time of digging deep within ourselves and turning over the soil, sweeping away the ruins, revealing that first love that's planted deep within us, and preparing ourselves to be a planting for the Lord.